All right, let's jump right in. When we need to be absolutely certain that a system, a pipe, a tank, any kind of vessel, is totally sound and free of leaks, we pressure test it. Simple enough, right? But how we test it? Well, that choice introduces some wildly different safety risks. So today, we're going to break down hydrostatic versus pneumatic testing to really get a handle on what changes and, most importantly, why it matters so much. And really, that's the bottom line right there. This isn't just about picking the right tool for the job. It's a critical safety decision. The goal is the same for both: prove the system is solid. But the potential for things to go catastrophically wrong couldn't be more different. So, to really understand that difference in risk, we first have to get on the same page. Let's make sure we're all clear on what we're actually talking about. At its most basic level, the whole thing boils down to this: what are we using to create the pressure? On one hand, you've got hydrostatic testing. That uses a liquid, and almost always that liquid is just water. On the other hand, you have pneumatic testing, which uses a gas, usually air or nitrogen. And believe it or not, that single choice is the root cause of everything else we're about to discuss. So let's zoom in on a hydrostatic test for a second. We fill the entire system up with liquid, water. Now, because liquids are practically incompressible, it takes just a tiny bit of extra volume to jack that pressure way up. And that property, right there, is the absolute key to understanding this. Now, compare that to a pneumatic test. Here, we're pumping in a gas, and unlike a liquid, gas is highly compressible. That means we have to cram a massive amount of it into the same space to hit our target pressure. And as you're about to see, this creates a totally different and much more dangerous energy situation. And that brings us right to the core of this whole explainer, the invisible danger. It's all about the physics, and it explains exactly why the risk levels are worlds apart. So let's just ask the question straight up. What is it about using a gas that takes the danger level and cranks it all the way up to 11, compared to just using plain old water? And this table, wow, it lays out the answer so clearly. Just look at these properties side by side. Water has super low compressibility, right? That means it stores very little energy. If something fails, it's probably just going to spring a leak. But air, it's highly compressible, which means it stores a massive amount of potential energy. And its failure mode, it's not a leak. It's a catastrophic rupture. We're talking an explosion. This chart just drives that point home perfectly. At the very same test pressure, the amount of energy stored up in a pneumatic test isn't just a little bigger, it's on a completely different scale. Orders of magnitude higher. This is not a small detail, folks. This is literally the difference between containing a leak and trying to contain a bomb. If you need a dead simple way to remember this, just think about a balloon. If you poke a tiny hole in a water balloon, what happens? The water kind of dribbles out, right? The pressure drops almost instantly. But if you pop a balloon filled with air, kaboom, it explodes. That violent pop, that is the release of stored pneumatic energy. Okay, so if pneumatic testing is so much more dangerous, why would anyone in their right mind ever choose to do it? Well, understanding the risk is step one. Step two is understanding the real-world problems that sometimes force our hand. So let's look at those key considerations. Trust me, this choice is never made lightly. You have to ask some really tough questions. For instance, what if the system absolutely has to be bone dry after the test? Think about certain chemical or gas lines. In that case, using water is a total non-starter. Or what if the liquid could contaminate the product? What if you're in a cold climate and there's a risk of freezing? Or, and this is a big one, what if the sheer weight of all that water would be too much for the system or its supports to handle? These are the real-world engineering challenges that might push you toward a pneumatic test, despite all that extra risk. So as you can see, this decision is way more than just technical. It gets into professional responsibility. It demands a mindset that is all about compliance. And here's something that is absolutely crucial to get. The test pressure, how long you have to hold it, what counts as a pass. Those are not just numbers someone pulls out of a hat. They are dictated by strict engineering codes, ASME, API, and others. These standards exist for one reason: to keep people safe and to make sure things are reliable. Look, doing the test right is only half the battle. If you don't document it, and I mean meticulously document it, it might as well have never happened. A proper test record is the official proof. It shows exactly what procedure was followed, what pressure was hit, how long it was held, and that a qualified person signed their name to the results. Without that paper trail, you've got nothing. Okay, when the stakes are this high, we have to tackle some common and frankly pretty dangerous misconceptions that are floating around out there. Let's set the record straight. First up, and this is a big one, is the myth that you're just testing to the normal operating pressure. The reality? No way. Test pressure is always significantly higher. We're usually talking 1.3 to 1.5 times the maximum pressure it'll ever see in service. We're not just checking if it can do its daily job, we're proving it has a safety margin built in for when things go wrong. And the second myth is this idea that there's some kind of default one-size-fits-all approach. As we've seen, that is completely false. The right test method can only be picked after you've carefully analyzed the system, what it's going to be used for, and, most importantly, after you've done a formal risk assessment that weighs all the factors we've been talking about. And this right here, this sums up the whole safety-first mindset. The goal isn't to get the paperwork done. It's not about ticking a box on a checklist. The real goal is to gain true, verified confidence in that equipment's integrity and to do it in a way that keeps everybody safe. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. The next time you're on a job site or you're in a planning meeting and a pressure test comes up, how does this new understanding of stored energy, of the difference between a leak and an explosion, how does it change the questions you ask? How does it change your entire approach to that next safety briefing? Thanks for tuning in.